It was in the beginning of the reign of Malvagil of Arthedain that evil came to Arnor, for at that time the realm of Angmar rose in the north beyond the Enten moors. Its land lay on both sides of the mountains, and there were gathered many evil men and orcs and other fell creatures. The lord of that land was known as the Witch King, but it was not known until later that he was indeed the chief of the Ringwraiths, who came north with the purpose of destroying the Dúnedain and Arnor, seeing hope in their disunion while Gondor was strong.
How's it going, guys?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Welcome back. Keep on Tolkien.
I'm Danny J.
This is Joel N.
And we're coming back to you with our second installment of our cool 3-part installment of
The
Kingdoms of the Dúnedain. Hell yeah. And today we're going to be talking about the Northern Kingdom, Arnor.
Right, so first part we covered Numenor. That was the first kingdom. The second two, after the fall of Numenor, they founded the two kingdoms in Middle-earth known as Arnor in the north, Gondor in the south.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to cover Arnor today.
Yeah, and so this is a little refresher question here. So what we covered in the last episodes, we covered who the Dúnedain were. We covered the creation of Numenor, the golden age of the Dúnedain, the corruption of the Dúnedain, the fall of Numenor. We covered Elendil, Anarion, and Isildur, and them sailing away with precious artifacts, and that's where we left you.
Mm-hmm. They were getting helplessly thrown to the east.
Right. So those are the kind of the precursor things. If you didn't listen to the last episode, it'd probably be a good idea to go back and do that.
Check it out. I mean, the fall of Numenor is just a really cool story in general.
Yeah, really cool. We were excited about it.
It's like Atlantis in Tolkien's world on crack.
Yeah.
And it involves Sauron, so
go
for it.
And we're really excited about that episode. We recorded it like 15 minutes ago. It was great.
Doubleheader today, guys.
Yeah. All about the Dúnedain.
The Dúnedain. So
All
today,
right.
talking about Arnor?
Yeah, we're talking about Arnor today. We left you with Elendil and his sons in their 9 ships sailing east, right? And just as a reminder, they're bearing with them the seedling of Nimloth, the 7 Palantiri, the seeing stones gifted to them by the Eldar, and presumably the Ring of Barahir, which we talked about in the last episode. There's no real clear-cut history of the Ring of Barahir for whatever reason, but we know it survives, so therefore it had to get out of Numenor somehow.
And that's the only feasible way.
That's the only feasible way. And that was in the year Second Age 3319 that they sailed away toward Middle-earth. And 1 year later, in 3320, Elendil lands in Middle-earth and establishes the Northern Kingdom, which he calls Arnor. And in this, we're probably going to keep referring to it as the Northern Kingdom, even though it is called Arnor. I prefer to call. What do you prefer to call it, Joel? Do you call it Arnor?
I go back and forth.
Yeah, I suppose. I mostly call it Northern Kingdom. So Northern Kingdom is Arnor, Southern Kingdom is Gondor, guys. So when you hear us refer to it as such.
Yeah, we'll also throw up some maps to accompany this just so you can see exactly where we're talking about.
Right.
Gondor is where you know it to be more or less. It was a lot bigger.
It was bigger then.
At one point. And then Arnor is basically that huge region between the Misty Mountains and the Blue Mountains, that area that like the Shire, Bree is all in that massive area. That was all the Northern Kingdom at one point.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, Elendil lands in 3320 in the Grey Havens, and he proclaims something in Quenya. And I'm here to butcher that Quenya for you.
Let's hear it.
So here we go. Et earelo endorena utelian sinome maruvan ar hildiniar ten ambarmeta. And that translates to, out of the great sea to Middle-earth I am come. In this place I will abide, and my heirs, into the ending of the world.
It's really beautiful.
It's really beautiful. And a little Third Age tie-in here. In The Return of the King, especially the movie, Aragorn actually sings this at his coronation when he becomes the United King.
King Elisar.
King Elisar. Yeah, and he sings it. It's beautiful.
Oh, yeah, that's the chant that he starts up after he gets crowned, and then everyone quiets down and he starts chanting that very song.
That's that very song.
So when they arrived in Middle-earth, after the fall of Numenor, there was already a sizable immigrant population of Numenorians there because, as we'd mentioned previously, the Numenorians went everywhere.
Yeah, literally everywhere.
Yeah, they really populated the coasts of Middle-earth. At one point, they had almost like a coastal empire, almost. Yeah. It's not quite as it was. They got attacked by Sauron a lot. But there were still a lot of remnant immigrants of Numenor.
Yeah, definitely Numenorians living here, and they're most likely living under Gil-galad.
Right. Yeah. As the men living in Middle Earth, they didn't really have their own kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
They just kind of went with the elven kingdoms that were there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just like the Edain of old.
Until now.
Yeah, until now. Now they have their own king, guys. Yeah, if you were to ask like Turin, who's your king, he'd be like, oh, it's Fingon. You know.
Right. High King of the Noldor at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But now we get to the kings of men.
So yeah, there was already the sizable population of Numenorians, but they were also at this point starting to intermingle with what we call middlemen, or men of the Edain that didn't make the journey to Numenor. So this is when the blood starts to wane a little bit, just because it's getting muddled.
They say, yeah, when they started basically mating with lesser men.
Mm-hmm.
We don't like the term lesser
men.
It
sounds eugenicist and racist, and I just don't like it.
Right.
I prefer the term middlemen.
Middlemen.
They're middlemen.
Right. That's also an official term we use, so we're just going to go with that.
Yeah, so middlemen, they start intermingling with middlemen, and they lose a little bit of their lifespan, and I think at this point they start to be able to become sick.
Right, yeah, because originally the Numenorians, that actually failed them before Numenor even fell.
Oh, that's right, that totally did fail them even back home.
Yeah, when Numenor started to turn, they started losing some of those graces, but...
Mm-hmm. So Elendil founds the capital of Arnor, the city of Annúminas, and that's in SA, Second Age, 3320. And he ruled the kingdom from there. And there are several other cities of note in Arnor. There's Fornost, which we'll get more into later, Tharbad, Laundyre, and Tirn Gorthad are some cities to name some.
Yeah, Fornost comes to be one of the biggest ones out of that list, right?
Yeah, Fornost is the longest surviving city of the north.
So after the founding of the northern kingdom of Arnor, Elendil later goes down south and founds the southern kingdom of Gondor. But the people of Arnor, they were more of that of the remaining Edain. And if you remember back to the last episode, the Edain were basically the men that traveled into Beleriand and were faithful to the elves. They were friendly. So the folks in the northern kingdom were mainly the Edain that lived in friendship with the Noldor and some of the faithful Numenorians left over. So all in all, the Northern Kingdom was a lot more in tune and knowledgeable of the Elder Days than the folks down in Gondor.
In the Southern Kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I imagine that the Northern Kingdom would have been closer to what Numenor was like in its glory days. Something pretty big happens in the first... While Arnor is still young, actually, it's they're on their first king still. Elendil is still the High King. And that's a little something called the Last Alliance. And the Last Alliance was formed in Second Age 3430, and it was they're combating the growing threat of Sauron.
Right, so this is after the initial ring scheme that happened in the Second Age. They defeated Sauron once in the Second Age after he originally made the rings. Then he went to Numenor. He basically got defeated again, and now he's arisen again after that. And I think he's coming out of Mordor at this point, is he not?
Yep, out of Mordor.
Yep. And so the folks of Gil-galad once again align with the men that are now living in Middle-earth, and they form the Last Alliance.
Yeah. And they spend 2 years gathering their forces. And after the 2 years are up, Elendil and Isildur meet Gil-galad on the watchtower of Amun-Sul, which is what they call Weathertop in the movies. Mm-hmm. So Weathertop, is actually the ruins of an old watchtower.
Right, the old watchtower of Amun-Sul. I'm pretty sure they actually have Aragorn point that out at
Does
some
he
point.
say that? There used to be a Palantir there, too.
Yeah, that was one of the Palantir, because originally, when they originally brought the Palantir over here, they actually used them in very useful ways, especially in the northern and southern kingdoms. That was kind of men's way of communicating.
That was how they communicated across the United Kingdom,
Across the UK.
The UK. Shout out to the listeners in the UK.
What's up, guys?
What's up, guys?
Where are your Palantir?
Back to Gil-galad and Elendil and Isildur. So they meet on the watchtower of Amun-Sul, and they take their forces down to Rivendell.
Right. That's the first time that their forces officially all meet together, right? To talk about this problem.
Yep. And then they go down to Rivendell, where they stay for another 3 years?
Yep.
Yeah, another 3 years. They this is the time period when Rivendell gets known as the Great Forge because you have all these armies. They're forging weapons there. They're training there. They're forming plans. They're doing siege stuff.
Right.
They're literally doing everything for it. So this is a 5-year process so far.
Yeah. They met up finally. They got all their different powers together. Go on down to Rivendell and start building up your armies, like training, getting your weapons.
Oh yeah, getting it all ready to go.
I mean, that's a pretty sweet place to go. They've got a lot of good resources there.
Mm-hmm. And so the hosts of Gil-galad and Elendil and Elrond. And we also should say the forces of Círdan.
Yeah,
because Círdan is there.
Yeah,
he's one of the leaders as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why we
Yeah, the forces of Círdan from the coast, from the havens, from Lindon.
Yeah. So they travel down the Great River, where they're joined by hosts of elves from Lorien and Greenwood. These are Nandor elves. They're green elves.
Right. So we had all the men getting together in the north, going down the Great River, and as they go south, they come across Lorien and Greenwood, or what we'll know as Mirkwood.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's just joining up in this alliance.
Everybody's joining up.
Except for the dwarves.
Except for the dwarves. And Lorien is led by somebody called Amdir, who's their king. And Greenwood is led by Orifer, who's the father of Thranduil, who's the king in The Hobbit.
So that's, Orifer is Legolas's grandfather.
Exactly.
So they go even further down the river after they meet up with Amdir from Lorien and Orifer from Greenwood. They go further down and they meet up with Anarion and the host of Númenóreans from the southern kingdom of Gondor.
Oh, yeah.
They're really massing everyone up here, and they really put it together well, actually.
Yeah, and this is when Gondor's huge. Like, Gondor's huge. It's got a lot of cities, a lot of people.
Yeah, Gondor's initial kingdom size was just massive. We'll throw some maps up so that you can see, but it encompassed a larger, way further south than you'd think. I think they went down to the Bay of Umbar.
Yeah, because Umbar was a Númenórean port at one point. Yeah.
All of Rohan was part of Gondor, and a lot of the northeastern portions. Just nobody really wanted Mordor. It just kind of like sat in the middle, and nobody fucked with it because it sucks. Mordor does suck.
Yeah, so we meet up with Anarion and the Númenóreans, and now we're stacked, son.
Yeah, everyone's stacked.
And we're not going to get into it, guys. We could do a whole episode about the Last Alliance, so this is only a small part of the history of Arnor. So we're just going to say that it took a really, really long time, and it was a really, really hard fight.
Right. When they finally mounted the battle against Sauron in Mordor, against Mordor, there was a lot that happened, a lot of history, a lot of facts, a lot of people died.
Yeah, years and years. It took, I think, like 7 years to siege Barad-dûr. It took a long time, and a lot of people are killed.
Yeah, so we might get into the Last Alliance kind of on its own episode later on. So we're just going to kind of go over what the results were.
Yeah. So the hosts of Orifer and Amdir are utterly slaughtered, and those are the hosts, the corpses that are in the dead marshes now. Are made up largely of Orifer's forces. So at that point, Thranduil becomes the king of the Greenwood, and Amroth becomes the king of Lorien. Another thing that happens is, sadly, Anarion is killed.
King of the South.
King of the South is killed. He's killed by a rock that's shot from the height of Barad-dûr from a catapult during the 7-year-long siege.
That sucks.
That really sucks, yeah. It does. And then, again, sadly, Gil-galad, High King of the Noldor, is killed.
That's really sad. This is a big turning point in the history of Middle-earth, period.
Right, period. And he was also one of the bearers of the Three Rings. So his ring is entrusted to Elrond, who's his herald.
I think this is the first time any of the ring bearers have died. And not only is it the first time any of the ring bearers have died, it's also the very last High King of the Noldor, period.
Yeah, and he had the titles King of Lindon, King of the High King of the Elves in Middle-earth, High King of the Noldor in Middle-earth, and those titles are never claimed by anyone else because they have no right to claim those.
Gil-galad was a really good leader, and he actually led for a really long time.
Yeah.
And I mean,
he's the son of Fingon. Yeah,
losing the last High King of the Noldor, I mean, that stretches all the way back to First Age, pre-First Age. Like, that is a major line of history that's just ended.
And like we said in our last episode, kind of bridging between the Age of Elves and the Age of Men is a huge turning point.
Right.
Because the Noldor essentially have no leadership anymore, and they don't have a kingdom really after this anymore.
Yeah, no, they don't. The Noldor don't really have their own kingdom. They have a few outposts, like I'm sure there are Noldor in Lindon with Círdan.
Yeah,
and then there's a
and then
sort
Rivendell.
Rivendell's kind of a haven, but there is no official kingdom of the Noldor anymore.
No, yeah, they're just kind of scattered around the population of other elves.
A really sad turning point in the history of Middle-earth.
Yeah.
Because the Noldor have been a huge part of history for a long time.
Right. Some good things happen as well. Sauron is overthrown
Right.
after this battle. His host is utterly defeated. They've all either been slaughtered or fled. Barad-dûr was thrown down, literally thrown down. But
minus the foundations.
But yeah, minus the foundations. The foundations remain, which is what leads Sauron to be able to build it up again in the Third Age.
Do you think the foundations of Barad-dûr is at all reflective of Tolkien's overall idea of evil never really being vanquished?
Yes, Joel, I do. I think that's a very astute observation, actually. Yes.
Why? Thank you, sir.
Yes. So Sauron's physical form is destroyed, and his spirit flees to the southern Greenwood, which, because of him, later becomes known as Mirkwood.
Right. This is kind of when it becomes a Mirkwood. When he flees there, that's when evil kind of starts to spread. It's not quite evident for a while, but...
Mm-hmm. But it definitely becomes the Mirkwood.
Right.
Another thing that happened, more sad news. Elendil is killed, and the High Kingship of the Dúnedain is passed to Isildur. And Narsil, the sword of the king, is broken. But Isildur does use the hilt shard to cut the ring from Sauron's hand, which destroys his physical form and vanquishes him somewhat for a while.
Yeah, for a while.
But he also then claims the ring for his own, ensnaring himself in the doom of the ring.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get into some post-Last Alliance stuff.
Yeah, so the fall of Sauron officially brings about the end of the Second Age. After the battle, Isildur takes the body of his father and his brother back to Minas Anor in the Southern Kingdom to more or less, you put them in the tombs there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's where they keep mainly the bodies of the kings.
Yeah.
So he stayed in Minas Anor to give counsel and instruction to Meneldil, son of Anarion, who then went on to become king of the Southern Kingdom.
Yeah, he was pretty young at the time, at least in the reckoning of the Númenóreans.
Right, hence needing a little bit of guidance.
A little bit of guidance. He stayed there for, 3 years?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 3 years to help prepare him, to groom him, as it were.
Right, but Isildur still kept the title of High King of both kingdoms, which is the title that his father Elendil had. Because when Elendil came over, they founded the two kingdoms, but Elendil still remained the High King of both.
Right.
And so Isildur now took on that title.
Mm-hmm. And on September 5th, Third Age 2, Isildur sets out to make his way back to the Northern Kingdom. And he takes with him 200 Númenórean knights and his 3 eldest sons named Eretan, Cirion, and Elendur.
And on this journey is when we run into what's known as the disaster of Gladden Fields. And
yeah, this is a fucked up moment.
it's a slaughter.
Yeah. So Isildur and his men are attacked by orcs while crossing the Gladden Fields on their way to the High Pass of the Misty Mountains, which is the High Pass is the where the hobbits were in the Hobbit where they crossed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The pass of Karok, I believe it's called.
Yeah, right outside of Rivendell, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Just northeast.
Yeah. And they're on their way to the High Pass. They're outnumbered 10-1. So what happened? Isildur's like, oh, okay, this is very not good. So he takes his esquire Otar, and he sends him ahead to Rivendell, and he gives him the shards of Narsil, and like I said earlier, probably the Ring of Barahir. Presumably the Ring of Barahir.
Yeah, we had this conversation earlier actually because so at this point in the history of the Dúnedain, they're once again friendly with the elves, so we'd assume that they'd be one of the leaders would be wearing the ring.
Right, yeah, you'd assume, yeah.
Right, and 2 of the leaders just died. Elendil died, and Anarion died. So even if
who else is wearing the ring?
Right, of the 3 of them, 2 of them were dead. So we know that Isildur would have gotten the ring at this point, and we assume that he must have sent it off because what happens next?
Because his 2 younger sons are killed in the battle, and then Elendur, his oldest son, begs Isildur because he knows about the ring, and he's like, you need to take the ring, and you need to get out of here.
Yeah, the one ring, the ring of power we're talking about.
The ring of power, which he cut from the ring of the hand of Sauron. So Isildur, because he's a valiant man, he's, say what you want about him, he did refuse to destroy the ring, which is a moment of weakness, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But also, he doesn't want to leave Elendur and the rest of the Númenóreans to be slaughtered.
Right, he's faithful to his people.
Yeah, but he reluctantly agrees because he knows it's important. And he flees wearing the ring. And Elendur and the remaining Dúnedain are slaughtered, every single one of them. And Isildur attempts to swim the Great River. And what happens is the ring slips off his finger. and he emerges from the water. And I was actually reading something how it describes him losing the ring as he kind of feels glad for a moment that he lost it.
Really?
Yeah, because there's a great burden has been lifted, and then he comes up out of the water like feeling kind of refreshed, and then he gets shot by the arrows.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
He becomes visible and he gets killed by orc arrows. They just shoot him from the banks of the river.
Killed him.
And that is the death of Isildur. And I don't think his body's ever found, is it?
I don't think it is. But did you know that Saruman was secretly searching the Gladden Fields for the ring, and he found? I just read this yesterday. He found one of the royal jewels that Isildur wore.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So he did find some evidence.
Yeah, some evidence of Isildur. So whether or not he found his body or not, I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. So, but at that, knowing that Isildur was killed in the river and we don't know what happens to his body, we assume that he must not have been wearing the Ring of Barahir at that moment.
The time.
Which is why we think he passed the Ring of Barahir along with the shards of Narsil to his
Otar, esquire.
His esquire.
So with Isildur dead, the throne of the Northern Kingdom goes to Isildur's youngest son, Valandil, who was actually safe in Rivendell during the Last Alliance because he was too young to fight. He takes the crown when he comes of age in the year Third Age 10. But this is specifically different from Elendil and Isildur. He does not claim the crown of High King of both kingdoms like his father and grandfather, but only the Northern Kingdom. So what we get to, for some strange reason, the Northern King is still referred to as High King, even though he has nothing to do with
the Southern
Kingdom at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But the Southern Kingdom was just simply called King. So the two kingdoms are sundered at this point. The line of Isildur is running the North Kingdom, and the line of Anarion in the South in the Southern Kingdom.
They're still friendly with each other.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. They're totally sister kingdoms.
But now they are actually separate. There isn't any
yeah.
overall ruling entity. They're separate kingdoms now.
Yeah, and so the Northern Kingdom, which we know as Arnor, has 10 kings in all. Valandil ruled the longest with a reign of 247 years. Holy shit, that's a long time.
That's even longer than most of the Númenórean kings when they had those extremely long lifespans. That's crazy long. Yeah, most of the other kings at that time in Middle-earth ruled for around 50 to 100 years each.
Yeah, almost right after the Last Alliance, the decline of the Northern Kingdom happens. It's not glorious for very long after Elendil and Isildur die. But Valandil, under them, they had some glory for 247 years.
Yeah, that's a pretty long reign.
Yeah.
Yeah, corruption became a huge problem in the Northern Kingdom at that point. Social and political unrest. Númenos became depopulated, and the capital of Arnor was moved to Fornost in Third Age 861. And this is when we get the sundering of the Northern Kingdom.
The 10th and last king of Arnor was Eärendil, who reigned from 777 Third Age to 861 Third Age. And that's 84 years. And at the end, when he died, his three sons contested for the kingship. Normally, the eldest son would take the throne, but that was not so. And a mini civil war broke out, and the kingdom was split into three kingdoms.
Yeah, so now the Northern Kingdom of Arnor, is it still considered the Northern Kingdom at this point, or is it just called the three separate?
They call it the three separate ones from this time
from this point on.
Which is the first one, which Arthedain is more or less true Arnor. So Arthedain was ruled by the true king, the eldest son.
Gotcha.
Which is why it's essentially true Arnor.
Okay.
Yeah, the eldest son of Eärendil, named Amleth, he claimed rule of all Arnor. But after the rather bloody conflict, he only laid claim to what he called Arthedain. And then there was also Cardolan and Rhudaur.
Right. So we got the Northern Kingdom broken up into essentially three kingdoms now.
Three kingdoms, yeah.
Arthedain, Cardolan, and Rhudaur. At this point, we're still friendly with Gondor, are we not?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they don't like each other very much.
Okay.
But, I mean, they still talk with Gondor and stuff.
Gotcha. Well, then after the splitting of the Northern Kingdom into the three, then we get even more problems. We get the rise of the Kingdom of Angmar. Now, some of you might recognize that name. The region later known as Angmar was actually once home to many prosperous mining camps of the dwarves of the line of Durin.
Yeah, Joel's favorite people.
Woot!
What?
I love the line of Durin. They're great folks. But they were actually driven out of all of those mining colonies by orcs and other unknown evil creatures. So just so you get a taste, this land is kind of dark.
Yeah. Yeah, and it straddles the Misty Mountains, and it's northeast of Arnor.
Right. It's kind of like the northeast portion of that land.
Mm-hmm. And then just directly northwest of Mirkwood.
Yep. Just on the other side of the Misty Mountains from Mirkwood.
So Angmar was led by who we know as the Witch King, which at that time was thought to be a pretty powerful sorcerer. Mm-hmm. But nobody knew until later on that it was actually the chief of the Ringwraiths, sent to the north to destroy the northern kingdom of the Dúnedain, which is what our excerpt was about.
Right. Yep. The coming of the kingdom of Angmar.
So yeah, Angmar was founded with its stronghold at Carndum in Third Age 1300.
And that led to the inevitable war with Angmar. So during the reign of Malvagil, that's when the Witch King really rose to power. But it wasn't until his son Argaleb?
I say Argaleb.
Argaleb?
Yeah.
So it wasn't until his son took the throne.
Argaleb the First. There's another Argaleb.
So it wasn't until his son Argaleb the First took the throne that Angmar really started to show any aggression towards the Dúnedain. Leading up to this point in the kingdom of Rhudaur, one of those three northern kingdoms, the line of the Dúnedain had completely failed, and the kingdom was controlled by men loyal to the Witch King.
Yeah, Rhudaur is the line is broken pretty quickly there, and the Dúnedain no longer control it, and it's a vassal for the Witch King essentially.
Right, he basically extends his reign from Angmar to this third portion of the northern kingdom.
And his influence is so strong that Rhudaur eventually invades Arthedain in Third Age 1356, and Argaleb the First is slain. And the armies of Cardolan, who were still friendly with Arthedain at this point, helped maintain a line of defense against Angmar at the Weather Hills, which is where they kind of held them from, sweeping out to the sea and destroying all the rest of the Northern Kingdom.
Right, and at this point we got a little bit of an alliance at the last second between Cardolan and the kings of Arthedain, and for a time, once again, it was called Arnor again.
Yeah, they reunited for a little bit and became Arnor again. Isn't that nice? Mm-hmm. So that happens, but then in the year shortly after, in 1409, Third Age, Angmar annexes and completely terminates the kingdom of Rhudaur. It's basically like, this is Angmar now. You're done. And in the same year, in 1409, Angmar attacks Cardolan and Rivendell.
Yeah, Rivendell it actually gets attacked at this point in time by the Witch King's forces, because they've conquered so much of the Northern Kingdom lands now. They can do almost what they want. They run right on down and try to attack Rivendell.
Yeah, and so in this fight, the Watchtower of Amun-Sul that we talked about is destroyed, and the men of Cardolan were forced back to their capital on the Barrow Downs. And then a good chunk of the population also fled to Arthedain because fuck war-torn situations, right?
Right. I just really like this because it ties in with some of the points that we know in the Lord of the Rings. Because now the Watchtower of Amun-Sul is Weathertop, as we know it, destroyed.
The Shire is actually completely within the realm of Arnor, and the hobbits actually still swear fealty to the King of the North. When Aragorn becomes LSR, High King again, they pledge loyalty to him, and they are living in Arthedain at this point.
Right.
The hobbits.
And then also, like you mentioned a minute ago, the men of Cardolan were forced back to their capital on the Barrow Downs.
The Barrow Downs, yeah.
Which I'm sure most people who read the books will remember that's where
the Barrow-wraiths are.
The Barrow-wraiths are, yeah. And that's where we got our friends Sam, Merry, Pippin, and Frodo almost got killed.
Yeah.
And they got saved by Tom Bombadil.
By some angry sorcery left over from the Witch King.
Right, yeah. I was reading something where they assumed that the Barrow-wraiths had something to do with fallen kings.
The fallen kings of Rhudaur, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fun fact for you.
Fun fact. So, and then shortly after that, a couple hundred years later, something pretty terrible happens, and this goes across both kingdoms. This is the world of men is devastated by what was called the Great Plague, which came from Mordor, and that was in 1636, Third Age, and it destroyed like a good chunk of the population.
Right. It
like,
just devastated their population. Wasn't it like cut in half?
Yeah, it was bad. It was I can't remember. I read what it was. It was like Great Plague, like bubonic plague numbers. Like it was bad.
Right, and that plague itself kills off the remainder of the people from Cardolan.
Mm-hmm.
So there goes one more of those 3 portions of the Northern Kingdom.
So Arthedain stands alone.
Yeah, one of the kingdoms basically became part of Angmar, and the other one got attacked and basically killed off by a plague. Mm-hmm. And now we've just got this tiny portion left.
And in in the Third Age, 1974, the Kingdom of Arthedain falls, and Fornost is taken by Angmar, and there is essentially no Northern Kingdom anymore.
Every last part of the Northern Kingdom is now fallen.
Yep. And that leads to one of the bigger battles in the Third Age, the Battle of Fornost.
Yeah, this is one of the things that I don't know much about, so I was kind of excited about this episode, getting to learn so much about the Northern Kingdom.
Yeah, Battle of Fornost is nuts. We should do a whole episode about it. It's pretty crazy. But the king of the last king of Arthedain, his name is Arvidui, right? Is that how you'd say that?
That's how I'd pronounce it.
Arvidui. And he's the last king of Arthedain. And he flees to the Ice Bay, which is called Foroshel.
Yeah, it's a bay that's just north of
the Havens, right?
Of the Havens, yeah. So if you're looking at a map of Middle-earth, we'll post it up there. It's north of Lindon, the western coast, and it's north of the Northern Kingdom. It's literally like the northern bay in Middle-earth.
Yeah, it's an ice.
It's on like the tip of the map.
An ice shelf, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he flees up there, and there's a person, God, he's like the greatest character ever, and he sends a ship to rescue him.
Ships.
Who would send a ship? Maybe a shipwright?
Yeah.
Maybe Círdan, the friggin' shipwright?
Who else?
Who else? But Círdan sends a ship to rescue him. Against the advice of the snowmen of Foroshel, who live in the region, they told him not to get on that ship.
Yeah, because at this point, those wild men of the north, the snowmen of Foroshel, they'd been kind of dealing with Angmar for a while, because Angmar was pretty close. He was like right south of them.
Yeah.
And so they knew a lot about the evil of the Witch King. And he was like, right now, it's winter. It's the Witch King's time.
Yeah, it's the Witch King's hour.
Like, we would really advise not trying to go out and sail right now in the winter when the Witch King has so much rain over the land and, like, the weather and things. And they're like, we got Círdan's ship.
Yeah. So something very, very important that he does, though, is he takes my favorite artifact, the Ring of Barahir, and he gives it to the snowmen, and he says... He ransoms it essentially, like, my people will pay you, like, a shitload of money for this.
Right, because these northern men saved their lives.
Yeah.
They retreated north to this haven, and the northern men more or less saved them. So this is
his token of
gratitude.
Yeah.
As oftentimes the Ring of Barahir becomes some kind of a
token.
It
is kind of always a token of gratitude, isn't it? Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, so he gives that, the Ring of Barahir, gives it as a token to the wild men of the north. He hops on a boat and goes out to Círdan's ship, and what happens?
Wouldn't you know it, the ship sinks and he drowns.
All of a sudden, the weather just kind of goes to hell, and everything freezes over. And I think the ship runs into it gets crushed between ice and things.
Yeah, I think it gets crushed between sheets of ice or something like that.
Right, and then they get stuck, and eventually they sink, and everyone dies.
Everyone dies. The end. But the Ring of Barahir survives.
Yeah,
which is leads us back to what is the line of kings, which does survive because he did have a son, and his name was Arnor, and he became the first chieftain of the Dúnedain, because after that there are no kings anymore because they don't have a kingdom. So they decide not to rebuild their kingdom and kind of live like in exile in their own kingdom, essentially, as like rangers. They become the Rangers of the North, or the Dúnedain.
So this is kind of when the Dúnedain make their finish their transformation into just the Wandering Rangers.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, and Arnor is the first chieftain, and so he eventually does get the Ring of Barahir back because, as we know, Aragorn, who is later the chieftain of the Dúnedain, has the ring.
Right.
So it got back to them somehow.
Yeah, actually, the Northern men, they ransomed it with the Dúnedain at some random point in the future.
Yeah.
But so Arnor, where was he during was he in Rivendell for a while? Is that how he survived?
I'm not certain, but yeah, he survived the fall of Arthedain.
I know
Oftentimes they're hiding in Rivendell.
especially the Dúnedain. If the young are hiding in Rivendell all the time when bad things are happening, it seems like.
And so after the fall of Arthedain, Gondor. So at this point, something to mention is that the Palantir are no longer widely in use. So the Southern Kingdom has no means of there's traditional means of communication,
which takes a long time.
It takes a long time, especially compared to the Seeing Stone, right?
Right, that's like a cell phone.
Yeah, wow. It's a cell phone in the age of horse messengers.
It's actually like FaceTime in the age of horse messengers.
It's Feanorian FaceTime. So yeah, they're not using those anymore. So Gondor doesn't know that the North Kingdom has fallen.
Right, the communication is not there like there once was.
So they send a pretty big host of men to help out. They sail down the Great River and set sail up the coast to Arnor. And they get there and they discover it's too late. And the leader is Prince. How do you say it? It's Arnor.
That's how I would say it. Yeah,
Arnor. He is the last king of Gondor. Actually, he later on becomes the last king of Gondor. But we'll get to that in next week's episode
about Gondor.
About Gondor, the Southern Kingdom.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Yeah. So Arnor, as soon as he gets there and realizes that he's too late, he is very upset.
Oh yeah,
very upset. And him and his forces, they utterly defeat the forces of Angmar and pushes the Witch King eastward.
And this is what becomes known as the Battle of Fornost, right? Yes.
I believe so, yeah.
Yes. This is all the Battle of Fornost.
So as the Witch King flees east, an army of elves from Rivendell, led by Glorfindel, cuts off his escape. And from there on, they basically got flanked. And the forces of Angmar are more or less defeated right there, are they not?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, once Glorfindel shows up to smash the hammer and anvil, essentially, yeah, it's all over. And a fun little fact, like we were talking about the hobbits, they pledge loyalty to the kings of the north.
Yeah.
It is Hobbit, at least by Hobbit reckoning. There's no mention of this anywhere when you're reading about the histories of Arnor. But hobbits insist that they sent archers to fight in the Battle of Fornost for the king. I'm not saying, there's nothing that says that anywhere, but the hobbits claim that they did. I believe them.
They're supposed to be pretty good bowmen.
Yeah. They're hunters and stuff. Yeah.
From the Scouring, there's a lot of really good bowmen.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But anyway, so the forces of Angmar get flanked by the forces of Glorfindel from Rivendell, and they're utterly defeated. But the Witch King himself does kind of the Sauron thing. He just slithers out and escapes.
Slithers his slimy little body out of there.
Yeah, and Arnor wants to pursue the Witch King because he's still absolutely furious. He just wants to kill the guy.
He's pissed, yeah.
He's pissed that they totally eradicated their sister kingdom to the north.
Yeah.
That's family.
Yeah, and it's gone. The whole thing is gone. He got there and I think he expected them to be holding, fighting the good fight and whatnot. Right. And it was gone. Everything was gone and everybody was
At this point
dead.
There's 3 kingdoms up there and they're all gone.
Yeah.
Just destroyed. Yeah, so he really wants to continue to chase down the Witch King and just kill him, but
who but our buddy Glorfindel holds him back, and he says, and he makes the prophecy that we know of from the Lord of the Rings, and not by the hand of man shall he fall.
Right, so this is the more or less foreshadowing of what happens at the Battle of Pelennor Fields.
Right, when Woman and Hobbit team up to take down the Witch King.
Which is a super badass scene.
Which is actually really cool, another Third Age tie-in. So that sword that Merry used, the only reason it was able to harm the Witch King is because it was made during this war, when they made it specifically to be able to harm
the Witch King. Because the Witch King had all of his own black magic and craft that would keep people from being able to hurt him, like enchantments.
Yeah, and it took a blade of Westerness, the blade of the Númenóreans, which they got from the Barrow Right on the Barrow Downs, which we just learned. Look at this, guys. It's all falling together, man.
Yeah, we just learned that the Barrow Downs were one of the last holdouts of one of the northern portions of the kingdom that fell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's where all these Númenórean artifacts came from. The northern kingdom was a lot more in tune with the Númenórean history than the southern was. They had a lot of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Which is where the hobbits get all their badass swords. All of them carry those blades, and they're so cool.
I'd still choose Sting.
Oh, yeah. No, I would choose a Gondolindran blade over a Westerness blade any day. Any day.
Any day of the week.
I don't know. I wonder what Frodo did with that sword, because it's not like, throw this shit away, it's awful. It was a good sword,
Right. He traded it when he was in Rivendell.
Yeah, did he give Bilbo the other one?
I'm not sure what he did with the other one.
Here, man, take this sword.
Take this shitty one.
It's almost as good. Yeah, this shitty sword. And we're looking at a sword made by the men of Westerness, and we're like, this piece of shit compared to this first age elven sword.
I mean, Sting glows. I mean,
Yeah, it does.
Come on.
And it cuts spider webs really easily.
Really well. Actually, it really cuts into a lot of things. I mean, it stabs it stabs into the foot of that troll, really well, too. Like, even when regular swords can't do it, he's just like...
Yeah, Boromir notches his sword on the troll, and then Frodo comes up and he's like, for the Shire! Stabs it.
The hobbits cut deep.
All right, so with the escape of the Witch King, that's basically the fall of the Northern Kingdom. They never... Aranath becomes the first chieftain of the Dúnedain, which we mentioned.
Right, no longer... any kind of like ruler of a kingdom. He's just
They're technically a king, but there's really no kingdom, so they don't call them a king.
Right. They're a line of kings with no kingdom, so now he's just a chieftain of a wandering people.
Yeah, and they decide not to rebuild the Northern Kingdom, not because they don't want to. I assume that they just don't have the means to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine how much of the population's been wiped out by now with that massive plague and then all of this war amongst each other and then Angmar. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a mess. I don't think it's even possible.
Yeah, and so at this point, the realm of Arnor is mostly empty, with few exceptions. The hobbits are living in the Shire, which is Old Arthedain, and then the Breelanders, which is also in Arthedain.
And those are two of the main places that the Dúnedain Rangers
like to hang out.
Continue to hang out and guard.
They guard those places. Yeah, they ceaselessly guard those places. I remember what Aragorn says at the Council of Elrond?
Yeah.
When he says about Butterbur, I know a fat... What did you say? Like a fat old man that...
A fat man in Bree. One fat man in Bree calls me a Strider. Little does he know that he lives like so close to all this danger that would come and kill him if they had the chance.
Yeah, that would like make his soul quake. Or so, like he lives a day's ride from... Yeah.
And yet we get no credit for this and no thanks.
And he calls me Strider. Yeah. We're going to get into our favorite chieftain of the Dúnedain, Aragorn, in the episode after the next one.
Right. Yeah, we're going to end our 3-part Kingdoms of the Dúnedain series, and then we're going to go into a 4th episode that is the story of Aragorn.
Yeah, because he's what ties in, spoiler alert, he's the next High King. Like, he's of both kingdoms.
Spoiler alert. If you don't know anything about Lord of the Rings. Yeah, Aragorn's the guy.
Yeah, he's the guy, man. He brings it all back together. And Aragorn is the 16th chieftain of the Dúnedain.
So that means that there were, in total, 16 chieftains over the time of Dúnedain Rangers, right?
Right. Yep, from Aranath to Aragorn, there's 16 chieftains.
And that's how the bloodline of the king survives, with no kingdom. Yeah,
and we get to this weird juncture, like when Aragorn, not to skip ahead to Aragorn, but when Aragorn does take the throne, we get to this point where there's a kingdom in the south but no king, and a king in the north but no kingdom.
Right.
So they get to this weird juncture where they're like, maybe we can make this work again, you know?
Right. And it does work very well.
It does, yeah, and we'll get to that, guys.
But that's all we've got for you for this portion about the Northern Kingdom of Arnor.
Yeah. So some of the things we went over today in this episode, the immigrations of the Númenóreans to Middle-earth, the establishment of the two kingdoms, one in Arnor and one in Gondor in the south. We talked a little bit about the Last Alliance. We talked about the sundering of the North Kingdom, sundering of the kingdom from south and north. And then we learned about the decline of Arnor, the sundering of the Northern Kingdom, the rise and fall of Angmar, a little bit about the Battle of Fornost, and then the overall fall of the Northern Kingdom.
So that brings us down to the final of the 3 kingdoms of the Dúnedain, Gondor.
Gondor, which we'll be getting balls deep in Gondor next week.
Oh, yeah. Tune in, guys. That final installment's going to be good.
Yeah.
Gondor's got some rich history.
Yeah. But that's all for Arnor, guys. Short story. Sad.
But something that I knew little about. I really enjoyed this one because this is one of those subjects that I didn't know much about. So I was really excited to be able to get in and read some of this research and learn. I learned a lot from this.
Yeah. So we were talking about this earlier. Me and Joel would very much like this new Amazon Lord of the Rings series to keep their hands off the Elder Days.
Yeah, that's our territory.
That's our territory. We're going to be making the HBO miniseries of the Silmarillion years from now. So stay tuned for that.
Stay tuned far future. That's in like pre-production.
It's in pre-production. But yeah, we were talking about how this would be a really cool story to tell in the Amazon series because it's Third Age, so it's not it's not Elder Days or anything like that. But also it would really kind of help explain the setting for that the Lord of the Rings takes place in. like this crumbling kingdom of the Dúnedain,
Right. Because they said that it was going to be pre-fellowship.
which is definitely this is
Right, but
definitely
they're still calling it a Lord of the Rings, so I assume that means it takes place somewhere within or near the Third Age. They didn't make it sound like they're going back to the Silmarillion, otherwise I assume they would have specifically
just called
said
it
so.
that. Yeah. So I'm assuming it's going to be Third Age stuff. So Third Age stuff pre-Fellowship, probably pre-Hobbit. I'm assuming is going to be the Fall of the Northern Kingdom, and I'm excited for that. I think it could be really cool.
Right, you could make a hell of a miniseries out of like the history of Arnor and Gondor and the fall of the Northern Kingdom, and this entire time when you get to go through this dramatic story with these like multiple huge battles and wars that go on, you can constantly do what Tolkien's work loves to do, reference this ancient history of the fall of Numenor.
Right, yeah.
And that's a really badass story that you can constantly reference, and then you get that that feel of just the world being already very old.
Yeah.
A lot of history. That's what I love so much about the Tolkien stuff.
Yeah, me too. Well, yeah, that's our hopes and dreams for this Amazon series, guys. Let us know what you feel about the Amazon series. We haven't really heard from you guys about it yet.
Yeah. Hit us up on our social media.
Yeah. Facebook, Twitter.
Whatever floats your boat.
Whatever floats your boat. But that's all for us. This has been Keep on Tolkien. I'm Danny J.
And this is Joel N. And as always, guys,
Keep on Tolkien.
keep on Tolkien.
Aure en Tuluva.